As you saw in the title for this film, this video is over the state of denial. And hopefully, as we go through this video, you'll be able to see some of the different things that cause people to be in a state of denial. So we're going to be taking a look at the rise and the fall of the United States global empire. The economic system in the United States is called a capitalist economical system. The empire has been falling and failing since the 1970s. Right now, we are in what is called the state of denial. We have people that are very quick to deny what is happening with going on in the economical system. MAGA has put their hands over their face, trying to block out the negative things that are happening around us, and they continue to pretend that nothing bad is actually happening right now. Now, going back through history, we have several different empires that have risen and fell to their demise. We have several different empires through history, from the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Chinese Empire, and so many more. Now, each of these different empires through the history began to rise when another empire began to fall and demise. All empires through time evolve and they change before they meet their final demise. Now, the British Empire, which started in the 16th century till it fell to its ultimate demise in the 19th century. Now, parts of the British Empire had broken away from the main British Empire and became what is now known as the United States of America. From that breakaway, there was the First War in 1776, which Britain had lost, and then they came back for a second war in 1812, which the British Empire had lost that war as well. Now, the British Empire had come to a complete collapse at the end of World War I. From the end of World War I, the American Empire really started to take off as the global leader. Now, the American Empire had started to grow back in the 1870s till it reached its climax in the 1970s. But in the 1870s, that was when the American economy was really taken off to what we know as American capitalists. We had amazing growth with our economy for about a century. You know, every decade, wages were growing higher than the cost of living grew, which that made what is called living the American dream. And that's why you get a lot of people that want to come to our country because, you know, they don't have the economical system that we have in our country, and they want to live that American dream. Now, during that time, we were able to give great profits to the capitalist, but at the same time, we lived in an exceptional time in history. Many people born into this great economy thought that, hey, this economy is going to last forever. And they ran hard with that notion ever since. Now, since the 1870s, the American economical system had become a huge global powerhouse. Now, in the 1970s, the American empire was starting to show signs of its demise. Those who never gave out loans before, and we're talking about the banks, started to give out loans for vehicles, for houses. Credit cards started to become a thing in the 1950s. But in the 1950s and 60s, when credit cards started out, they were diner cards. In the 1970s, more than 50% of households had one single credit card. Now, out of that 50%, only 16% of those credit cards that were issued in the 1970s were actually bank issued. But now, in 2025, more than 77% of American households with individuals over the age of 18 have multiple credit cards at their disposal. And since the 1970s was when the dream was starting to fall apart and fail. People, including politicians, were refusing to see that this great, big, huge empire was starting to fail. Since the 1980s, all economists from all sides of the playing field called for persuasions all to see the same numbers starting to fail. There has been distribution of wealth from the lower and middle class to the upper class. You have all the very top wealthy Americans that society makes sure you know who they are. The most wealthy of them all is Elon Musk. Since the 1980s, the wealthy became even more wealthy because our tax laws were continuously changing. Corporations had had several tax cuts over the past 4 or 5 decades. Those tax cuts were switched over to the lower and middle class citizens. Now, these tax cuts, they were done by both the Democrats as well as the Republicans, but the Republicans were a little more forceful about these tax cuts to the corporations than the Democrats were. The Democrats were a little bit slower at getting these tax cuts put out. Now, real wages came to a complete stop in the 1970s. Now, you're probably asking yourself, what is a real wage? Well, a real wage is when the money you make is adjusted for the price you pay on goods. So we're going to use an example. If you get a 15% raise and goods go up by 5%, you're making a real wage. If you get a 15% raise, but at the same time, goods go up 15%, with that raise, there's really not a whole lot to really feel good about from that raise because you're still spending the same amount of money. Now, a lot of employers, every year, they will only give their employees a 2 to 6% raise, but the percentage of goods continue to rise and they don't stop rising. And that is when it really starts to hit the pocketbook hard. Now, from the 1870s to the 1970s, the real money, wage rose more than the price of goods. This enabled people to purchase more goods than they are able to now. The wages that people earn now are comparable to the wages from 1978. That is when the real wages ended. This is part in where the state of denial really plays a huge factor in what is actually going on in our country as well as around the world. Now you have Donald Trump continuously promises to put more money in the middle class's bank. He keeps promising this. Since he took office January 20th of 2025, the price of eggs and gas have gone up. January 19th, 2025, the national average of gas was $2.89 per gallon. As of the recording of this video, the price of gas per gallon is $3.15. The price of eggs, which Donald Trump promised he was going to make groceries cheaper for us and emphasized on eggs, has a national average price of $7.09 per dozen. That is a 22% increase since January 19th, 2025. Those that closely follow Trump are in denial of the prices going up. They continuously make excuses as to why these prices are going up. You know, they're like, well, he's only been in office for a week. And, you know, the thing is, the promises that he made was this was going to happen within 24 hours of him taking office. Now, since the 1980s, after the whole real wage went away, there's always talk on both sides of the aisle about the middle class and putting more money in their pockets. What people don't realize is the middle class is always being used as a bargaining tool. Some politicians are able to get support by their huge promises, but those individuals have such thick blinders on their face or covering their eyes that they are unable to see what is really happening. Now, after the real wage went away, some huge things in our country have changed. Women left their homes to go work. And this goes back to what I said earlier about loans from banks and credit cards. You have loans, you have college debt, and other debts that keep going up, but the wages don't increase. Now, we have not had a minimum wage increase on the federal side, which is still at $7.25 per hour since 2009. So you have to understand that if the wages don't go up, you can't keep accumulating debt. In 2008, we had the huge modern credit system failure. That started the major demise of our economical empire. In the last 40 years, we had the growth of computers, robots, and AI technology. The production went way up, but the real wages did not go up with that production. And the real wages just have not returned. When your production for your employer keeps going up, but your wages don't, that is a huge sign of inequality. When COVID-19 pandemic hit, it rocked the entire planet. Companies started to lose money with supply and demand being down. Things got cheaper. The oil market was flooded with oil, causing the prices of gas to go way down. You know, people became blind to what was really going on at that point in time because they were always listening to what President Donald Trump was telling them at that point in time, saying, yeah, I got that price of gas down. But the problem is, there was simply no supply and demand. There was no demand for the supply that we had because businesses were shut down. People weren't working. States were shut down because of this pandemic. So the market was flooded, but they weren't able to sell that product, which caused the prices to go down. Now, going back into history, the United States wasn't the only country that was trying to become an empire of the economy. Germany was also trying to become an economical powerhouse. During World War I, Germany was defeated by Britain and its allies. Germany had territories in Asia, Africa, and other areas, and all that came to an abrupt end after World War I. The British took those territories in Africa from Germany after the defeat and turned those into British colonies. This hurt the working class badly because Germany wasn't able to have the empire it desired to have. Then a couple years later, Germany experienced the worst inflation that has ever been felt or seen anywhere in the world. Prices continue to double every day and sometimes multiple times a day. In 1929, the Great Depression hit Germany. With a great financial hit the Germans felt, they started to question what they were going to do, how they were going to survive. And then you had a little Austrian man with a little black mustache named Adolf Hitler who came into play. He made a lot of promises. He said he was going to get rid of all the illegal immigrants in the country because they were damaging the blood of Germany. And we know what happened with that story going into World War II. And this is where you actually look at what is going on in the United States of America right now. We are repeating the history that Germany started to feel in 1933. Right now in America, we are living the same exact scenario. People are living in denial and not being told the full story. Donald Trump has made some huge promises for the 2024 election, and only to backtrack on those promises, such as saying, well, lowering grocery prices isn't that easy to do. Right now, we're on a roller coaster ride. There was a huge ride to the top of the empire, and now we're starting to fall to the bottom and into our demise. No one is being fully transparent on anything that is actually going on right now. And even the people in the government are in denial on what's going on. Many countries now, half a century later, are signing up for the new global currency. Now, for the longest time, the US dollar was like gold as far as the world economy goes. But now you have a lot of countries are starting to shift away from the US dollar, and they're going to the currency in China. The US dollar just isn't worth what it used to be worth. China is showing all the signs of a rising empire, all while the American empire is falling apart. Most people don't like the fact that the American empire is failing. I don't like that the American empire is failing. None of us do. But most people are feeling a state of denial right now. And China is being positioned as a threat because they are in competition with the United States to take over as the global economical powerhouse. Now you have the GDP, which is a gross domestic production, is used to measure the strength of an economy. Right now, we're going to use 3 different countries for this example. Right now, Russia is sitting at $1.5 trillion for their GDP. They're not really much of a competition to us. Us here in the USA, we're sitting at $21 trillion for our GDP. But here's where our competition comes into play. China is sitting at $17.5 trillion. That makes China a strong competitor for the global empire. China has overtaken the USA in several fields as far as technology goes. We want to look at, we'll take a look at a single app on your mobile device or on your tablet called TikTok. TikTok, which is 20% owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company, is overtaking our American social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, so on and so forth. China has started taking a huge global position, which has frightened many people, including the United States government. With the United States not learning from history, it moves in the realm of warfare. Now, this time it's not a physical war, but it is a trade war. Trump declared the trade war against China back when he was the president from 2017 till 2021. Donald Trump had put many sanctions and tariffs on China, as well as he also put tariffs on other countries as well. Now, he set up a 25% tariff on against Canada for lumber, for softwoods from Canada, which affected us economically because, our price of lumber had started to increase. We started paying more at the lumber store for that lumber than what we were before the tariffs. And it, like I said, it caused the price of the softwood here in America to increase drastically. Now, these tariffs that were imposed by Donald Trump during his first pregnancy, which he pulled back a lot of those tariffs, were a complete failure in the end. But he has come back with his 2025 promise that he was going to impose massive tariffs on China, Canada, Mexico, and all the other countries out there. Now, if you look at the Ukraine and Russian war, some of why we got involved with it, besides the fact that we had a agreement with Ukraine back when they broke away from the USSR, that we were an ally and we would help them as far as humanitarian supplies. If they ever got into a war, we'd give them some aid with that. But if you actually look at what is really going on with it, Russia is one of China's biggest allies. When the sanctions were put against Russia because of this war, their big global market was oil. They had a hard time getting that oil out there for a short amount of time, but then China started to buy that oil to bring it into their country to use in their country. So we're doing a lot of this to help hinder the ability of China to become a powerhouse, which we're failing miserably at. Now, looking into the next 4 years, we're already starting to see a hit in the farming industry with the mass deportations that Trump is currently doing. Now, I also want you to think back to what I said earlier about Germany. With Germany, when Adolf Hitler came in, it all started off as mass deportations. And where did it go after that? The farmers are saying that with these mass deportations, crops are not going to be able to be picked. Fields are not going to be able to be maintained. Crops are going to rot out in the fields. Right now, we're in a complete state of denial.